but now it sounded utterly different. Tonight, it sounded like an album by a man at the end of a long and full life, refusing any self-pity, still wishing he had more time, singing over and over, at the center of it all, your eyes. As another one of his creations sang years ago, on his way to a similar exit, "Tell my wife I love her very much." The man who sang these songs had lived a life, and had worked hard to learn how to fall in love with the world he was about to leave. I flipped through an old issue of a British music magazine with Bowie on the cover. I have whole shelves of those. A magazine I happened to buy the night I met my wife for the first time. It was February 2003, in Charlottesville. I was meeting friends for dinner at Baja Bean. I was a couple of hours early. I went next door to Plan 9 Records and bought a rock mag so I could read it over some nachos in a booth by myself. A few hours later, I was face to face with the woman of my future. New love. A boy and a girl are talking. She was an astrophysicist and a goth Bowie freak. Quite a combo. On one of our first dates in NYC, I took her to the New School, where I was giving a lecture on Bob Dylan. She didn't have anything to add to the discussion. She told me afterward, "Bowie is my Dylan. Bowie is also my Bowie." Bowie was always a rock star who told me the truth. He warned me love was a scary monster, and he was right. Love is not loving. It wants to tear you apart and rip your sense of identity to shreds, and lead you astray and get you mixed up with people from bad homes. You can hide from it, but alas, that doesn't work. It's been tried. By Bowie, for one, a man who spent much of the 70s and 80s freeze-drying his synapses with any chemical within reach, only to accidentally bump into true romance with, of all people, a model. He fell in love at first sight. She didn't. As he said, I was naming the children the night we met. Iman was harder to impress. I fell in love with David Jones, she said. Bowie is just a persona. David Jones is a man I met. She probably met the real David Jones long before Bowie himself did. When he dropped out of sight in his 60s, after a 2004 heart attack, fans figured he'd finally slipped away to the private life he deserved, and that he'd found a clever way to retire discreetly. It was a shock on January 8, 2013, again on his birthday, this one his 66th, when he announced a new album that hadn't been rumored about by even the most obsessive Bowie watchers. The Masterful the Next Day. And it was another shock when he returned with Black Star, a completely different album, more of an R&B flow with goth guitar. It says a lot about Bowie that he was able to make these albums without anyone finding out. It says something about his guile, but it says more about the loyalty he inspired. Nobody breathed a word. For some reason, he had more stories he wanted to tell us, both musically and vocally. He also had some secrets he didn't want to tell yet. He lived with his cancer diagnosis for 18 months. The whole Ziggy Stardust thing was 18 months from beginning to end, Bowie said in 2002. It was a really short period of time. He knew his death would make the world lonely, so he did what no other rock star has managed. He made one last masterpiece as a parting gift. This was how he chose to spend his last year on Earth. Working. Guess he cared about us more than we even knew. He was already giving us music to help us grieve. Bowie's songs had been a crucial part of my grief experiences, just because he was so attuned to erotic loss, the way the heart keeps suffering through its endless metamorphoses. So it was a new experience to mourn for him. It's hard to let go of David Bowie. I never wave bye-bye, but I try. I try. When I was in my early 20s, I assumed my Bowie fandom was something that had peaked in my teens. That stands to reason, right? Except nothing stands to reason in the Bowie universe. Reason kneels before Bowie to lick his finger, then another finger, then his cigarette. And as it turned out, I became far more obsessed with Bowie in my late 20s than before, particularly Low, which spoke to my pushing 30 sense of disillusionment.